Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Town of Rocky Hill Open Space and Conservation Commission meeting. This is a regular in-person meeting for Wednesday, December 8, 2021. I'm calling the meeting to order. Let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Moving on, is there anyone here from the public that has anything to say that's not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, there's a public hearing.
Thank you.
Item A, Abdul Enterprises LLC, proposed drive-through addition at 1380 Celestine Highway, Assessor's ID number 04-552. Would you like to address the commission?
Yeah, my name is Mark Smith, professional engineer, CMG Environmental, and here with Kate Bednaz, Freshwater
Wetland Services, professional wetland scientist and registered soil scientist. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, I know we've been through this a few times, so we won't belabor some of the things. But first, I'll just a quick overview. And here's a little tricky, there we are. Okay, so here's the existing conditions. That is the how things currently are out there. So you've got your filling station, which was recently renovated. This is the canopy. This is the convenience store. The underground tanks are right here. As part of the prior project, we did some low impact development, stormwater over in this area, so the drainage sheet flows off, goes through a vegetated strip, and goes to our detention-retention basin. The south side of the property, the stormwater is handled by a stormwater treatment unit, and it is discharged to a plunge pool in the wetlands. You can see here there's a steep slope behind the building currently. And when I pull up the proposed plan, you'll see that the drive-through lane will enter here. We'll be relocating one parking space over to here. So the drive-through will enter here. We have a nice tight radius on it, functional but tight, that lets us bring the drive-through lane right against the building, and then we're able to exit through here. And when we get to the the impacts and mitigation, one of the things you'll be seeing is this plunge pool is going to be restored back to wetlands and pulled back underneath the proposed drive-through lane. We're also going to be installing some additional stormwater management. We're calling it a stormwater quality wetlands. So why don't I just call up that proposed plan. There we are. Okay, so this is the proposed plan. And like I mentioned, this is where the drive-through enters. We're planning on making it a concrete surface, be lighter colored, hopefully generate a little less heat into the wetlands. In order to create that drive-through lane, we're going to have a portion of retaining wall here. There was a comment last time about showing some sections through there, which we did. I'll show those in a little bit. This portion of the drive-through lane will be underlain by some large culverts. They're in the dashed area here. And the reason we're doing that, they're big open-ended culverts. The open ends face the wetlands, and that lets the water come in and out of them and lets us retain our flood storage, which we need to do. As I mentioned, this is where we're installing that stormwater quality wetlands. We found that the soils over here are very tight. They do hold water. So our plan is to feed that stormwater quality wetlands from the existing detention basin, which is retaining the water a little longer than I like. And then that'll just keep that basin full. And when it has excess water, it'll just sheet flow overland down to the wetlands. But that'll be a lot of stormwater treatment prior to going down into the wetlands. There is a plan here. I think I'd like to go over well, I'll mention because it'll come up in our discussion. We're proposing a fence all along our property line with Wendy's we found that the prevailing winds apparently are in this direction, and a lot of the trash, et cetera, that ends up on the filling station property actually is coming over from the Wendy's, and we're hoping that that fence should do that, catch that. Also, the drive-through lane itself is going to have a 6-foot-high fence, which also should prevent trash from getting off the site into the wetlands. So let me run through the impacts real quick. Should be on here. That's not it. I thought it got uploaded. There it is. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, so I color-coded this just so it's a little easier to read. The X's here, those are 8 trees that will be removed, but if you look at the planting plan, you'll see we're proposing 16 new trees with a greater variety, all native, and we feel there should be an upgrade as far as the tree inventory goes on the property. So we end up with, let me blow this up just a little. Technology, okay. So impacts. The brown shaded area, that was a drainage swale, a ditch. That's the permanent wetlands that'll be removed. Like I said, it was a drainage ditch. It's 390 square feet. Now, we're proposing the light green, that's 400 square feet of mitigation. That's replicated wetlands, that's attached, adjacent, is just an extension of the existing wetlands. In addition to that, we're also providing 430 square feet of what we're calling stormwater quality wetlands. I know there was earlier discussion about whether it's really wetlands replication if it's not, plugged into the groundwater. So we're not, we've already got 1-to-1. Obviously, if you did include that, which should function as a wetlands, we're over 2-to-1. Furthermore, we've got an additional 480 square feet, which, once again, we're considering it an enhancement. I guess you could decide how you want to treat it as far as wetlands mitigation goes, but Kate can address it a little bit better than me. But the open end of the culvert is going to have soil in it, and it'll get some light in there. And so we thought we just wanted to point out that that's another 480 square feet of enhancement. So I feel we're doing a pretty good job of mitigating the 390 square feet of drainage swale that's going to be disturbed. I guess with that, that kind of, like I say, goes through the impacts. I was going to turn it over to Kate and let her discuss the wetlands themselves.
Good evening again. So I have a printout of a write-up in a wetlands functions and values form that I can hand out to everybody, but I also see that it's on the computer so that I can pull it up so I can either sanitize and hand out, or you can watch on the computer. Okay.
The screen is fine.
Everybody good with the screen? Fantastic. All right. So, just to kind of bring home the conversation we were having last time about what the functions and values are of this wetland, it's nice to put it into something that you can visually see. So what I have here is a letter dated December 8th. Let me see if I can make it smaller. And while my letter's nice, it really doesn't matter much. The fun part is this form here. So the Highway Methodology Workbook has this form of value in there. Well, I'm not sure what that's about. Okay. Make it a little bigger so we can read it. There we go. So, on this form, what they've done is this document's been around for longer than I've been doing this work. So, and it's always utilized to determine what the wetland functions and values are of a site, and then we can kind of look at that as it relates to the project. So with that being said, what you do is you go through and you decide whether or not it's suitable to have these functions and values. So going through groundwater recharge and discharge, yes, it does have that function and value. However, as you can see by the numbers, so if you were to look through the report, which will go down, there's the cover sheet, and so right here is groundwater recharge and discharge. So with that being said, items 4, 7, 13, and 15 are what qualify. So item 4 is gravelly or sandy soils present in or adjacent to the wetland, which, as we have a lot of sediment that flows through that whole entire area, we definitely have that. 7, wetland is associated with a perennial intermittent watercourse, and that really is a big one on all of these because it transports nutrients, it transports floodwaters, so on and so forth. 13, signs of groundwater discharge are present, springs, things of that, the water flowing through there, and you have water seeping out of the bottom of the slope, creating those wetland conditions. And then 15, this wetland shows signs of variable water levels. So that is how this works for each of these different considerations. So flood flow alteration goes through the same type of qualifiers, fish and shellfish habitat, and it keeps going. So you guys can go ahead and flip through that on your, are you able to flip on your own while I'm on one screen? Okay.
No.
I can pass these out if, just.
Yeah, so, yeah, because it's nice to be able to look. And
Yeah.
I'm not going to go through every one of them because I think you would just get really bored, or some might get really bored. But essentially, so that's how you go about doing it. So when you look at flood flow alteration hits a lot of the points. Hits the most points. That's the primary function of this wetland, according to this evaluation. So you guys can always go through and take a look at that. The other one with fish and shellfish habitat, yes, there's probably a little guy in there, snails, of course, but it's really, you're not going to go in there and catch a big trout. This is not your place for a trout. There just might be somebody migrating by. Sediment and toxicant reduction. This, with having the wetland within it, is very important, and then how the wetland kind of expands on the sides of it more towards where we're working, that gives it the ability to have time for attenuation of the nutrients and the sediment as it runs through there. It gives that flood flow. Nutrient removal, obviously a water course is going through there, taking nutrients out, also being utilized by vegetation. Production, export, same idea. Sediment and shoreline stabilization. You have that buffer with the flood zone so that when you do have those heavier floodwaters, which can go through there, it can keep the shoreline stabilized. It has the room to move. Wildlife habitat, you know, there was a couple footprints in there, but I wouldn't qualify that as much of a function or value for this wetland. And then going down, the only other one that I could say something to, the rest of them were no, was visual quality and aesthetics. So while this wetland isn't the best looking wetland that you've ever seen, this wetland provides a nice buffer to the highway. So in terms of noise and things of that nature. So visually, you're not staring at the highway from where you are because you have this wetland in between the two. So not that it's the wetland that has a visual aesthetics, that's why it's still a no. It's just because of how it operates on the site. It does give some value. So that's how we look at these things. And as you know with the design, this design is really focused on having enough room for floodwaters, taking care of stormwater, because stormwater out in this area is primary. We have one-to-one replication, a little bit greater than, and then if you're thinking about what's underneath the drive-through, you're going to have hydric soils. So those hydric soils underneath there, they would qualify as a wetland according to the regulations, and they would have the criteria for a wetland. But because they don't have plants, or they may not have a lot of plants, and they just have the soils, we don't mind being kind of conservative on the approach and just say those are just an extra, as well as that sediment water quality basin that's going to be up on the top. That will also have hydric soils in there. That's going to have vegetation, but that's really purpose for cleansing and polishing the stormwater as it comes through. So from day one when I went out on the site, it was trash, debris, uncontrolled stormwater was like the biggest issue that I could see out there, because everything else was doing okay except for there was just water ripping through there, creating that channel, which is what our impact is on that channel. And then when you got to the bottom, there was a lot of sediment load, and the vegetation was having a hard time doing well because of that sediment load that kept coming in. So with doing this the initial project, we were able to get rid of that train of a gully that went down into the wetland area. And then I think by doing the drive-through, we're balancing the functions and values by making sure that we still maintain these functions and values that are already present. And I think we're doing that very well. So if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Commissioner Kelly?
I have one question going back to what Mr. Smith said. Mr. Smith, right?
Yep.
Sorry. You said the restored wetlands are under the drive-through lane. Some of them, is that correct? I think I asked about this last time too.
Yeah,
that
what
against
we're
the
counting
cement.
as true wetlands replication is not under the drive-through lane. That's an expansion of the existing wetlands because we had room on the south side. What we're saying is we've already got one-to-one, true wetlands replication, just expanding the existing wetlands. But in addition to that, we have these soils which will be underneath the culverts, which will provide wetlands function. So that's an addition. And then we have our stormwater quality wetlands. Once again, it's not down in the wetlands in that groundwater, but it's going to have a lot of the functions of a wetlands. So, we didn't, because we had some comments about those kind of things. Well, is that truly a wetlands under the culverts? Is that truly a wetlands replication? Rather than saying we have 3-to-1 replication, we're saying we've got 1-to-1, but then we've got another almost 800 square feet of additional improvements in stormwater quality that'll benefit the wetlands.
Could you call your exhibit up and point to these as you're
Yeah,
talking
okay.
here to help us out, please?
Yeah. Let's see.
And I think pulling up the grading, the original grading too.
Yeah.
'Cause I didn't go over that.
Yeah. So, what I was saying is this light green, that's a true extension of the existing wetlands. The darker green here, that's that 480 square feet that's under the culverts, but will have soils, hydric soils.
So that's additional.
Yeah, and then we also have our stormwater quality wetlands, which is 430 square feet. So I guess it depends on kind of how you define things. And so we were just trying to be clear, and as Kate said, a little conservative by saying we've got 390 square feet here of permanent disturbance. It was this ditch, had some erosion. That's what's being disturbed. The 100% offset is a creation of this light green wetlands, along with another 480 square feet and another 430 square feet, which is over twice the permanent disturbance, that will perform some wetlands functions and enhance the existing wetlands.
Thank you.
Yep.
Probably hear me without that. Oh, she needs to record it.
Oh, I apologize. It's hard to see on this particular site plan just because of the X's where the trees are coming out behind the gas station. Can you tell me what the largest caliper or the caliper of those trees is and about how high or mature those trees are?
Yeah, let's see. They're, actually, if I zoom in like this, see, we've got the data. So there was a 6-inch, a 6-inch, a 6-inch, a 12-inch. There was a 15-inch and a, this one here, I'm not sure what that one was.
That's okay. That's okay.
But they were not doing well. The tree, there was another 15-inch, and then this 18-inch is actually just a stump, but it was on our prior plan, so I wanted to note it, and we also wanted to replace it.
And how high are some of these trees? Or the highest?
20 feet
20
or
feet.
so.
Okay.
The trees that and this brings up what Kate was mentioning. We're trying to create as much replication as we can, and there were questions at the last meeting about going up into this area here. And I'm going to pull up a plan from before. I didn't remember it when I was standing at the podium last time, but we had looked at that before. And we didn't have all the trees on the plans at the time, and we were asked to go, check out the trees that were out there, and we did, and we go, oh, okay, you're right, there's a double 24-inch tree here, there's a 26-inch tree here, and so we decided, a 12-inch, a 15-inch, a 20-inch, so there's all this existing vegetation here, and to try and climb up the hill to extend the wetlands in this direction would have just been counterproductive. We just didn't consider it was feasible. And like I said, let me see if I can find, I know I had that.
I guess my point is, and what is the caliper and height of the trees that'll be planted to replace those?
Okay, they're, well, obviously, maturity is going to be a different number, but hang on. Shrink this down a bit and get to the planting plan. I can tell you the species, and unfortunately, Terry Hahn, our landscape architect, couldn't be here today, but we do have on our plan, okay, so these are the trees that are going to be planted. 4 Homestead elm, 3 Indian summer crabapple, 3 sassafras, 3 red elm, and 3 white oak. So they'll all go in at between 2.5 and 3-inch caliper, and obviously at maturity, those are some large trees.
So how many years would it take them to come to the maturity of the trees behind the gas station?
Not being an expert on it, I don't know.
20 years?
No. It depends. So the hardwoods would grow slower than the softwoods, obviously. And so putting them in, if they're 3.5 inch, and assuming that a 20-foot tree might be an 8-inch caliper tree, right? So you're looking at maybe 10 years, give or take.
So you noted in the memo that you didn't observe any wildlife in the wetlands when you were there. Did you see any in the trees?
Well, aviary species, yes.
Yeah.
So they were always calling. But I
Right.
mean, in terms of, there was a muskrat track that was down there.
And
Frog jumped. There was a green frog for sure.
And are there any animals currently using these replacement detention ponds that were put in as part of the last project?
I haven't looked to see. I'm sure that there's frogs and aviary species in there. I don't know. I doubt a turtle's crawled up that far, but maybe because the soils are very sandy, so it might have been desirable. But I hadn't gone through to take a look. I do estimate that there will be some critters that will like the cover of these culverts underneath. They'll be perfect for them. And to set up a home base down here because of the flooding potential, I mean, if it was me, I wouldn't put my home there. So I think, some of these more long-term residents for wildlife, they're going to be going at higher elevations and just coming down for water and feeding.
Okay, so although you're exceeding the square foot area in replacement detention areas from what would be taking, they're not equivalent as far as equal
I would
in
say
terms
that-
of wildlife, at least not for another 10 years.
Actually, when you're looking at this area here, so this is one of the largest mitigation area. It was 400 square feet through here. And we're not even accounting for taking out the spill pad that was put in as part of the previous project. We're going to have really dense plantings in there. So that area, especially with the shrubs that are going to be going in there, the seed mix that goes in there, that might actually be better quality because there's not, this whole area has been damaged by, we've put plantings down there, but I think just adding more and more lower canopy plantings will really help that. So I can see it either being sustained, if not improved, by what we're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And I think just, did you happen to find that grayed out from before?
No,
there?
I think it's on my thumb drive. Somehow it doesn't seem to have gotten uploaded.
So I just want to make sure it's really clear because I know, I think it was Drew that had, Commissioner O'Connor that had asked the question last time about this grading. And I'm just going to go through. Oh, this one blows it up real. Not good enough. Let's see. So his question here was, could you take, where you have WA 115, could you take this and make this area down here a wetland, right? So when we did our grading, These trees all had to come out, this 12-inch tree. So this, because of how steep the drop-off is, because we're already at a 1-to-1, and if we want to really consider where the hydric soils are, we are truly at a 2-to-1. And then if we go in and we add more, that's all fine and dandy, but are these trees more beneficial, the mature trees, more beneficial than having this little bit area of wetland? So in my opinion, and this is why the final plan that we have in front of you at this moment does not show that, I do feel that preserving the mature canopy where we're able to is more important than adding more wetland area. So if that describes it for you.
Thank you.
And, once again, Terry Hahn, landscape architect, couldn't be here, but I know that when she specified the shrubs here, they were, because we're not just doing the additional trees. And, once again, it was 8 trees that had been, to a large degree, choked by, bittersweet. So we're proposing 16. So long-term, I think we will definitely be better off. But we're also proposing 23 winterberry shrubs and 4 northern arrowwood. And once again, not being an expert on plantings, though, I believe one of the reasons she selected the winterberry was because it's a habitat type planting.
And it's great looking, and then also we have plugs that are specified to be planted in the water quality treatment basin, and we have seed mix as well. So we're really going to be enhancing the biodynamics of this area by having all these different vegetation available and having a greater density. It would be nice to see a little better density, and this will do that.
Commissioner Kelly again?
Another question. You mentioned bittersweet, and over the course of all our months of having these discussions, did we talk about removing invasives? Or looking at what's existing?
I'm trying to remember. It's been going on so long.
Yeah, if you don't mind,
Sure.
we talked about it, and the idea was we can pull it out, we can do a good effort now, but realistically, getting back to feasible, I think everyone knows about invasives. We're probably not feasible to try and just fight them back, so they're probably going to creep back in, but we can deal with some of them now.
Yeah, so my experience in a location such as this, where you have a water course that's going to be bringing in new seed mix all the time, where the adjacent properties you don't have access to for control, so you have Phragmites really going crazy downstream, right? You have the Oriental bittersweet. Trying to remember if there was some winged euonymus in there. So I think going in on a one-shot deal with a cutting, removing. If it's not, you can paint on a rodeo potentially, or just take out the stock and then put in the new stock to outcompete it. But I have chased sites when I was younger and more hopeful in these situations for years to try to outcompete these species. And unless you're really having the ability to control the watershed that's feeding it, it's very difficult. So I think a one-time effort is very reasonable. I think something that requires prolonged effort for completion, I don't think it's attainable.
You mentioned that choking out the existing trees. Don't we think it's going to choke out new trees?
So when we put in the new shrubs, it will outcompete for the invasives location. So, they can still go ahead and try to wind up and do what they do. But when you take, especially if we were to take them all out, and then you go ahead and put all the shrub layer in, the seed stock that's going to be in the ground isn't going to get that sunlight that it needs to work to grow as well. So the more that we have native species out competing the space and the nutrients and the sunlight, all for the invasives, so then the invasives don't get half as much, the natives start taking over. But my 20-something years in wetlands, I rarely get between a highway and a bunch of commercial development and find that those areas can persist on their own for very long because of the amount of input that happens just by the nature of its location. If that makes sense.
Thank you.
Commissioner Schweitzer?
These plans you're showing us tonight, these are revised plans from what you had previously submitted?
There were some very minor revisions, which I'll go through. I'll call them out. So I actually talked to Bob about that. I don't want anybody thinking we've changed a bunch of things here. I can go through the like 3 minor revisions, and just so you know, but these plantings are all the same. They haven't changed a bit. So maybe now would be a good time to just go through exactly what the revisions were. And they were really a result of 2 things. One, we had our own team meeting to try and see if there was a feasible way to expand the replication area, and we kind of talked about that. And then on the demo plan, actually, where is it? Apologize, this is still kind of a new system for me. Okay, so right here, I wanted to highlight this. Let me zoom in, because I'm just going to run through the minor changes that showed up. During our discussion about trying to create additional wetlands, and if it was possible, the landscape architect noticed we had pulled the 27 contour here, done some little additional grading, and she said, well, is that really necessary, et cetera? We said, well, you know what? No, not really, because she thought it would be better for these 2 trees to not be grading in that area. So on the prior plan, we had this 27. The new 27 came way down here like this, and per the landscape architect's recommendation, we said, you know what? We're not even going to touch that. We're just going to leave it. So that was one item. The other was there was a request to add some additional sections. So we added a section here through this retaining wall area, and a section here through this retaining wall area, and they're right here. And by the way, I have 7 copies of these plans, and the revisions we made are ballooned, so you can see what they are. So I can pass those out so you have them. And then on the demolition plan, if I can find out where that is, decided not to change that 27 contour, and the landscape architect wanted us to put a real prominent symbol here for tree protection. So we added the symbols for tree protection. So those were the only changes we did. Reduced the grading, added additional tree protection, and added the 2 sections that were requested.
Okay. I'll need to see those before I'll have any questions. So,
Can you get him the copies?
Yeah.
oh, it wouldn't be tonight anyway, so, I mean,
Okay.
It's understandable.
So,
Thank you.
so these have a revision date, and changes were.
Okay, thank you.
And Commissioner Whelan, do you have any questions?
I do not.
All right, I have no questions either. All right, so at this point, I'm looking for a motion to close the public hearing.
Actually, I'm
Wait.
sorry, I just had one
Wait,
other.
sure.
It's just more of a handout, and I've already tried it. What it is I went back to the regulations just so I could put down, because I know we talk about things in different orders, we get questions, so I figured I would just put down what our intent was, sort of, relative to the regulations. Basically, it's a summary of what we were trying to accomplish. We did read the regulations and looked at the criteria that you're charged with considering, and tried to bullet point out what we feel we've incorporated into the plan to satisfy all those requirements. And I thought it'd be good to just give it to you for your deliberation, to have it so you could have it all in one place where it'd be handy.
I don't think we want to close this public hearing. Don't we want to table it?
Well, yeah,
You want to table?
well, no, do we close the public hearing or?
No. What I would suggest is that
you have received a lot of, quite a bit of information that you need to study before more questions are asked, if there's a need for that. So I would suggest that the public hearing be kept open until the next meeting on the 12th of January 12th.
Okay. So we just wanted to table them.
Table it.
Table it. So I'm looking for a motion to table the public hearing. And
I'll make a
continue-
motion to table the public hearing for
Until-
Abdullah Enterprises LLC until the January meeting.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second? No,
Okay. All those in favor?
aye.
All right. Okay, that takes us to application for permit, but since since we just tabled this meeting, we'll see you next week. I mean, next month.
I was like, wow, moving right up.
Yeah.
Moving right along.
See you next year.
Aye.
Okay. All right, so we won't take action on the permit because we have new information. We'll take this up next week. So moving on to number 6, actions taken, minutes presented for approval, the November 10th meeting.
Make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to approve the minutes for the November meeting.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the minutes?
No.
Hearing no discussion, a vote to approve. Can I get a motion to a vote to approve the minutes? Oh, wait, no, we
All
don't,
vote.
we, yeah.
Aye.
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 All right, minutes approved. All right, section 7, discussion, plan of conservation and development, the Plan Implementation Committee.
Mr. Chairman, no meeting
No meeting.
last month, no.
Okay. Staff's report, Bob, various projects?
Just very little to report, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Basically, I know that a few of the commission members were interested in knowing the status of the Ames proposal. And there was a public hearing that was conducted on the 1st of this month. There's going to be a continuation of that public hearing on the 15th. So next week, the public hearing will be continued. For those of you who are interested, there might be some minor revisions, but not really major revisions that they might be looking at. The former Rocky Hill landfill, we still have not heard from the DEEP as to when they're going to finish their final study on it, and so we can have it go back to boards and committees. So we are waiting. We're in waiting mode. And also for those of you who are interested in knowing the status of that, the 14 lot subdivision of Old Main Street is still in the hands of the DEEP and the courts. So we have not gotten a resolution. I heard that they're pretty close of resolving, coming to an agreement on it, but we have not received any documents that say they are. And that's about it for projects.
Okay, anything on open space?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the Farmland Acquisition Committee had a meeting, I believe it was last week, and regarding the Straska property, we're moving ahead with, we're speaking with 2 professors from UConn who look at parcels such as ours and help us plan, because of course we have ideas of what to do, but there's a large amount of acreage that is available to the town, not leased out to the farmers, that we want to put a structure on, and we want to have community gardens, and we have a lot of ideas, but we're not experts on laying this out and how's best to do it. So I'm sorry, I don't have the names with me, but they are both professors. They do this. They work with undergraduate students on these projects, so it's very encouraging. We had our first meeting, gave them a lot of ideas and information as far as what we want, and then they will be coming back to us. This will be a multi-month project, but it's very encouraging because we feel like we're doing what we promised the citizens when they voted to approve this referendum. We're following through on it.
Okay. Bob, legislation?
None,
Conferences?
none.
Okay, correspondence and communications.
So the only item of correspondence was as stated by the agency at the last meeting. We were asked to draft a letter on behalf of the chairman to the town of Cromwell, asking that perhaps, due to the magnitude of the Donkey Kong proposal, it's now called the Highlands proposal, by the way, which is located at within 500 feet of the town of Rocky Hill, to write to the town of Cromwell, recommending that perhaps a peer review or third-party review be done on this application. A letter was drafted, was approved by the chairman, was hand-delivered to the staff in Cromwell, and was read. My understanding is that it was read into the record of the December 1st meeting that they had, and we'll take it from there. I did hear that the Wetlands Agency of the town of Cromwell had asked for a peer review, so I guess that's good news.
Yes, nice work on the letter, Bob. It had the effect. I mean, we have a right to be concerned about the water quality going into Dividend Pond from this project. Okay, any other business? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of adjourning? Aye.
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 All right, meeting closed. Thank you very much, everyone. See you next year.